So, Shannon, this isn't anyone's favorite thing to do, but it's part of a first year's job. Any questions?
Nope, pretty simple.
I'd like to welcome our very own Dr. Shannon Rivera to the night shift.
Jordan, nasty two-car accident out on Route 16. TC and Topher just went out in the chopper.
Okay, let's go.
The night shift at a busy trauma center like this is the Wild West.
Clear?
And we are the calm in the eye of the storm. We make it all okay for everyone.
Our neck is hanging by a thread.
We're gonna have to intubate as soon as we get her down. Get that backboard ready!
Your tour is extended another 3 months.
I'm sorry, I won't be able to be there for your birthday.
Let's go.
Everybody spread out!
Right, guys!
We found him. We found the boy.
Frankie, you were in an accident, but you're okay now.
What are you doing to my wife?
You can't just walk in here. You gotta get out.
She is my patient. Get out of my ER.
Don't let them pick me.
I just don't want it to be awkward for us working together.
She lost a child. She lost you. Give it some time.
You want to be taken seriously. Present with authority. You are a surgeon. Got some loops on the hemostat. TC, hold pressure that side. I got this.
We have to follow Afghan laws.
Give her to me.
Take care of my Bobby, please. He's lost his pulse. Let's start CPR. Welcome back, Poppy. Thank you. Poppy.
Thanks, everybody. Scott, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. So
Now, I'm not sure about it, but I feel like it's every actor's dream to be in a medical drama. Is that true?
It was one of mine, for sure, for sure. I mean, I grew up on hospital shows. Saint Elsewhere is a show that I make. I'm revealing that I'm 98 years old.
That's the one where it ended and it was all a dream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it ends, like the last shot is, there's an autistic boy who's basically conjured the entire world up in his mind, which was like simultaneously brilliant, like sublime, and like frustrating. Like I just devoted how many years of my life? But yeah, no, that show, I remember, you know, I grew up not far from here in New Jersey. What? And
But born in Boston, right?
born in Boston.
What?
Oh,
What? Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, but watching that show growing up, it was one of the first shows I was allowed to watch because it was on at like 10, and it aired at a time where I still had a bedtime, and but I remember just sitting on my couch and being stunned by the level of emotion. I'm still choked up years later.
That little autistic boy's dream really got to you.
It really did. It really did. But yeah, there's a reason why hospital shows are always on television. It's a world people are kind of endlessly curious about. It represents obviously people at their most vulnerable, and you know their lives are literally on the line, and and the level of expertise, and you know it's a magnificent thing these men and women who practice medicine are capable of doing, and so portraying them is it's a cool opportunity, and we get to say some pretty cool and confusing things.
Yeah, I was gonna say I mean, I'm sure you take it very seriously as an actor because you have to do the scenes, but how much research do you feel like you have to do? How much do you feel like you have to know what you're saying in the scenes?
Plenty. I mean, definitely enough that everything that comes out of my mouth in terms of what I'm saying, and even down to how I'm moving my hands around, what instruments I'm holding. So I'm playing a surgeon on the show, so it's not just kind of taking temperature and telling people to take 2 aspirin. It's you know, we're inside of a body, and the special effects on the show are intentionally very graphic and very, very good. And so every time we get a script, it's funny because I think back to like St. Elsewhere, you know, those people playing doctors at that time did not have Google or YouTube where they could like look up surgeries, you know. So we can, you know, I had to do a surgery the other day where I was repairing a nerve in someone's leg, and I looked it up, and you know, you can find anything.
You just watched it like on YouTube?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Amazing. And so, and then we also have always at least one, sometimes two medical technical advisors who are real ER docs who spend their time on the set with us and make sure everything we're doing looks and sounds accurate.
Do you ever have other people on the set, like you're in your trailer watching surgeries and like a director, like, don't do that. Come on, just come on set. Like, you don't need to do, and you're like, no, I like it.
Well, it's funny. I definitely am not squeamish about it in general. Yeah. But I had my first moment the other day of it was the nerve surgery, and for some reason I don't know if it was the way they shot it, because in researching the role I actually shadowed a cardiothoracic surgeon, a heart surgeon, and stood like this over 2 open heart surgeries on children, actually, which was intense.
Holy shit.
Yes. Can we say shit?
I did.
You did. Holy shit is right. And incredibly illuminating in terms of, watching a real life surgeon do their work, that kind of sustained focus and expertise, and also leadership and calm and all those things. And I drew off that a ton in trying to build this character. And
can you go back for just a
sure.
second? When you were shadowing this surgeon,
yeah,
and it turns out that you're going to shadow surgeries that are over children, did that change the way you felt about the shadowing at that time? Did that sort of give you any pause?
So when I shadowed this particular guy, the heart surgeon, it was before my first child was born. And to be honest, I don't know how I would have perceived that or what my comfort level would have been. Now that I have children of my own and that relationship is so clear to me and dear to me, I don't know if that would have roughed me up in a different way. But even at the time, he got permission for me to do the consult with him. So literally from sitting with the kids' parents and talking about the procedure to scrubbing in, to being in the room, to stepping into the field. And I stepped up on, like a box like this and just stood over this open chest of an 8-year-old girl and a 2.5-week-old boy. Baby boy, I know. I've never experienced anything more intense, and I was just an onlooker here. But this guy, both surgeries took a total of about 7 hours. And I can't focus on anything for more than 8 minutes tops if I'm really into something. And so that discipline and that focus and that belief that this little heart that needs repairing belongs in your hands and that you're best capable of fixing it and saving this little life is something that is fascinating to observe. It's kind of a marvel. And to portray it is an honor. And it's why on the night shift I feel like, there's a real concerted effort towards being as authentic as we can be. Obviously, we're not, spoiler alert, actually performing surgeries while we're filming the show. It's disappointing to people when they hear that.
When you were in the consultation before the actual surgeries, was there a moment where the parents who were in the consultation were like, the doctor was like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to open them up. We're going to repair. We're going to do this. And they're like, great. And then the parents are like, I'm sorry, I loved part 5. I was such a fan. I know we're going to operate on my child, and it's a very serious thing, but I just loved your character and go.
If they were thinking it, they withheld that. They kept their cool. They had bigger fish to fry that morning.
What's Neve Campbell like? She seems great.
Totally, can you imagine? We'll talk about her later. Yeah. There were a couple moments during that process. That was one of them where I was just tried to be as sort of invisible as possible. But really gracious of this. One of the baddest ass surgeons at UCLA performing those kinds of surgeries. One of the best surgeons of his kind in the world. And so, yeah, man, it's pretty cool. It beats playing a plumber. Not that there's anything wrong with plumbing.
They're tweeting, right? All the plumbers of America are tweeting at you right now. They're so mad.
Every network is developing a plumbing show right now.
Just to sort of make sure that everything's okay here after your comments about plumbing.
That's right. Do
you ever feel, now that you sort of have shadowed a real surgeon and you've seen the concentration and stuff, do you ever, because you are a medical drama, a lot like all medical dramas, drama has to ensue outside of the operating room as well between characters, and sometimes it's far-fetched or it's just sort of the emotional drama of a hospital. It's like a bit of soap opera-y. Do you ever feel sort of weird about that after having seen the reality of?
No, because Look, a hospital is a place like any other place, and it's filled with human beings. And even though life and death is on the line, and especially, in a hospital, in a trauma one emergency setting like the hospital we portray on The Night Shift, it's based on a real hospital in San Antonio, Texas, and it is like nonstop casualties coming through the door. So it's intense, but they're human beings, even though they're kind of badass doctors and surgeons and nurses. And so there's interpersonal relationships, and there's downtime between cases, and there's overlap between life and work. And I think the show does a pretty great job of balancing, like you said, there's a lot of relationship drama and, more sort of traditional soap aspects to it, in that the show does concern itself not just with the lives that are being saved and the medical mysteries, but also, who's kind of moving toward who and who's romantically interested in who.
Well, it's a network show. There's a frame that you have to fit stuff into, and if your interest as the actor, as the creator, is the realities of surgery,
yes,
that's one aspect that you can focus on. But the show itself has many different mouths to feed.
For sure, and we're not a medical documentary. We're not a show just about surgeries. And but again, the balance that it strikes between, and the big thing is, it never feels like, even though the stories about the relationships between the characters can be really interesting, really emotional and involved, they never come at the expense of the medicine. It'd be one thing if somebody's like bleeding out in the background and, you got two doctors like, why didn't you go out with me again? That'd be a little tough to watch week after week. So, you got to strike that balance, and this is something that I know I'm attentive to. The writers and producers, thankfully, are, so it's not like we ever really have to catch them on this stuff. But I'm always sensitive to, this guy is a doctor first in this place. He's also a man. He's also trying to have relationships and fix interpersonal situations, but doctor first.
I want to ask you, I'm going to do what I assume the people in the consultation did. I love Go. Go is like one of my favorite movies of that decade. I think it's a really fantastic movie. Maybe Doug Liman's best, in my opinion, as well.
Oh, well. And he's done a bunch of
He's
great
done
ones.
a bunch of great movies. Is it true that he initially did not want you for that part?
Yeah, he never told me that to my face.
He told you that he didn't, or he did?
He did not.
Oh, okay.
He did not, thankfully. He spared me that awkwardness. But I did read that. And I know, part of it wasn't a personal thing, but Katie Holmes, who at the time was still on Dawson's Creek, had been cast. And I think he was sensitive to the fact of, he didn't want it to feel as though it were sort of laden with people that were known from TV shows. But I did a bit of a test, like not a screen test per se, but I went in and Jay Moore had already been cast in the role of Zach. And so they were casting his boyfriend and his soap opera partner, co-star. And so I went in, and Jay and I just got on great and got who these two guys were. And it was just one of those great, fun, magical things where it was like everybody, it seemed like, at that point, it didn't matter who was on TV, who wasn't on TV. It was just like, that feels like those two guys. And that movie was, it was so fun to make. Doug's an immensely talented guy. And Jay and I had some really fun scenes and some great chemistry. And yeah, I hear about that. It's funny, you kind of gauge. Sometimes you can you get a sense of what things have meant to the audience, by walking through airports. And
because you get like, party of five, go.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, but a lot of Go, which I'm always proud of. Yeah, because it was just a super fun movie, kind of ahead. Not necessarily ahead of its time, but of its time in such a substantial way.
Well, that makes me happy to hear that people are sort of recognizing Go and hopefully rediscovering it. I was always worried that it would be so specifically of its time, that it would be something that is like a child of the 90s, like only I knew. But it does seem like generations are sort of picking it up and finding it again, that it's going to live on.
I think so. And I have to say, I'm now, I've been doing this long enough that old shows that I've done or old movies I've done, that they have these kind of, and now with Hulu and Netflix and all these other brand new outlets and ways for people to see this content, there's just sort of new waves of viewership and appreciation, and Party of Five for one thing. It's available. I think it's on Netflix. I think it's on Hulu.
Remember when it was announced that it was going to be on Netflix, I knew personally people who freaked out and were going to go binge Party of Five.
Yeah, which is great. And this sort of circle of life thing where, I get stopped by people who are like, I grew up on that show, I love that show, and now I'm like showing that show to my kids. Yeah. And the messages of it and, what that show was about and the depth of the storytelling still resonates, but to a brand new audience, which is pretty cool.
Was that technically a hit show when it was out?
Technically, yeah.
No, because there's like Friends,
right?
And then it's like, nothing was Friends.
It wasn't Friends. What's funny is it was one of those like sort of endangered shows, right?
Like I read a quote recently where you said, I think while you were making it, you had said like, I don't know if we'll get picked up or something like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, weekly. The show when we started aired on Monday nights, and it would be like, get to the sound stage on Tuesday, like, click. Okay, the lights still work. We're good. Like, we can make another one of these, because there were no guarantees. If something wasn't performing well, they could cancel it at any time. And so, we knew we were making something really special. About a couple months into, at some point we were making our second season, and the show got nominated for a Golden Globe. And just the nomination was a huge deal. Yeah, woo! Is that for Golden Globes or for 25? Either way.
I just love the Globes.
Who doesn't?
Of them, they're very excited.
Who doesn't? And so the show got nominated, and it's funny because, look, we were up against ER and, Chicago Hope and all these
medical dramas.
Other shows that you guys weren't alive to see. Yeah, there were a couple medical dramas, but all just big hits. And our show was doing pretty well and had this really great, if small, intensely loyal following. And we won the Golden Globe. It was sort of like a Cinderella story. We shook up the world. And it's funny because I'll never forget, we were way back, like they sat us like as far from the stage as you could sit people. We were like by the men's room, and we were just glad to be there. And they read the nominees and they showed all the clips, and it was like, Lord, this is, these are all the shows that are winning Emmys every year. And I'll never forget Blair Underwood, great actor, was one of, sure, he's better than the Globes. So Blair Underwood is presenting with this woman who I just can't remember who it was, but it was his reaction. So they list all the nominees, and he's kind of standing over her shoulder, and she's like, and the winner is, and she opens up and she goes, Party of Five, and he goes, whoa, like that, which is not great like award show etiquette to act that shocked that the winner has won from the stage, especially. I'll never forget that, and that sort of changed things. That was thank you to the Hollywood Foreign Press. Still, all these years later, that kind of got things tumbling in a great direction. And eventually, by the time we ended after 6 seasons, you could, especially for Fox at the time, I think they would have definitely called us a hit for them.
Well, what's so interesting about that is like a hit then, or even a minor hit. The TV landscape has changed so much that what you would call a minor hit then would be the biggest hit on television right now.
100%. I mean, the numbers, just because the marketplace has been fragmented by all these networks, and it's great. I mean, look, there's more options for shows for people to find something they love than ever before. But yeah, the numbers, what was endangered, like we were on TV Guide's list of best shows you're not watching. And there were something like 11 million viewers a night. Seriously, like that was the number.
That's like the number of people that watch The Big Bang Theory,
yes,
which is like the most successful show on television.
Yeah, we would definitively be in like the top 5 shows on network television right now with the exact same viewership. But those times are different now, and I like to think that, for as difficult as it's made the environment in some ways, because the big idea is to gather as big an audience as possible. I do think in some ways it's raised the bar for the medium. It's harder to get people's attention. It's harder to hold people's attention. And, I'm sort of...
The cliche phrase is like content is king at this point. People are responding to the content itself, not just where it is or the placement. It's not like they have 4 channels, like, oh, I guess I'll watch this.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'll watch the best thing that's on.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a time, again, this is like a referendum on how old I am, despite my face. But, we used to watch TV, right, when it was like 4 networks. And I remember when I was a really little kid, we didn't have remote controls yet. So you'd sit there watching something pretty crappy just to be like, is this bad enough that I'm going to get up and walk over there, change no, this is fine. And now, it can be like one of your favorite shows. And if it like bores you for a second, you're like, I got something else.
I got 150 channels.
I got so many nothing but options.
Yeah.
But I'm ever the optimist, and I think on some level, it makes everyone making this stuff, telling stories, just have to rise to that occasion and tell stories that are ever more engaging. And it's not easy. It's why, doing a show like the one I'm doing now feels like when something finds a sweet spot of casting and writing and production, and you create a world that actually makes people feel like they've just kind of tumbled through their television or pad or phone or whatever they're watching on into like a real world. It's not easy to do, and I'm proud to be part of a show that's doing it right now, and have been lucky to be in a number of shows that have been that successful as well.
And 3 seasons is no small feat in this marketplace at the moment.
It's not. And even when you get to 3 seasons, back in the day, if you got to 3 seasons, it was sort of like your ticket's punched. Your show works and has found an audience, and it's basically like, how long is the cast willing to stick around and do it? And now, it's a year-by-year prospect. Even very successful shows just have to keep delivering and delivering a good story and hopefully delivering an audience. But yeah, you can't take any of it for granted. Thankfully, I've never really taken any of it for granted. I mean, I feel really lucky to be able to, jump in the circus with a bunch of great people and tell stories, and been very lucky to play characters that I believe in and can get behind and pour myself into. And even at this point with, a family and a life outside of this work, I'm grateful that I am still as passionate about doing it, and feel like I'm lucky enough to be invited to tell stories that are worth, pulling myself out of my house with my beautiful the little daycare center my wife and I run. Got 109 kids.
I'm going to date you one more time, unfortunately.
Okay.
But I was looking at it, and one of your first roles is as an extra in Saved by the Bell in like 8 or 9 episodes, right?
Yes.
You were like a busboy. You were like a high school student. Like a number of different parts. It looks like.
Yeah, I was a waiter at the Max.
Not a busboy. Excuse me.
Not a busboy. I might have started as a busboy and worked my way up, but and then I was in the Glee Club. I was actually the day I got to Los Angeles. I knew that acting was something I wanted to pursue, but I had never stepped foot on a sound stage. And I just figured before I was going to have to be in front of cameras acting and responsible to like walk and talk and look, like a human being, I should know how it works. What does everybody do? What does it mean when they say action? What does it mean when they say back to one? What does it mean when they say roll sound? I didn't want to kind of get toppled over by some wave of information that I didn't have. So for me, the background work was primarily that. It was a little bit of like on-set school training, and it was invaluable. And I did a bunch of, I was on like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and Life Goes On, and so I became a regular extra on Saved by the Bell. So they would hire 50 kids, and you would basically be the, what was the high school? Does anyone watch that show?
Bayside.
Bayside, nice.
Bayside, bro.
You said Bayside, bro. So you were like the Bayside student body for the year. And then little by little, they'd be like, you, get over here, you're in the Glee Club, or you're a waiter at the Max. And it was a cool experience because I got a chance to, the cast was really sweet. And
Were they? I mean, I believe you, but I imagine it if you were an extra, like they parade these teenagers who are super famous in front of you, and they're like, "All right, let's do it."
there was probably a little of that. They weren't in the college years yet, but they were like close.
When they really became dicks. No.
Yeah. No, I think they were still pretty into the whole thing. But yeah, was an extra for a stretch, and it helped. I mean, look, by the time I got my first speaking role, funny enough, that little bit of exposure to what was happening on a TV series set was helpful. And every little bit of mystery you can sort of unlock and solve and kind of demystify. I mean, that's I think a big part of the early stages of the work of an actor working on camera. Is each new thing, first it's just an audition, is kind of this foreign beast, and how do I manage it? And then you get a callback, and you're like, oh, okay, well, auditions, I got callbacks. What are they about? And now there's producers here, and then you finally get a gig, and suddenly that sort of glass ceiling is broken. And little by little, look, I'm still, 25 years into a career, still uncovering little mysteries day to day, and that's why one of the things that drew me to this work, other than having been moved beyond myself by performances that I saw when I was a kid, that was transformative and was the first thing that made me go, that looks like a pretty great thing to do with a life. But when I started studying the work, and I realized, oh, this is something I could do for the rest of my life. And never really figure it out, never be done. And being an endlessly curious, easily bored person, that appealed to me.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn it over to the audience for some questions. First question.
Hey, Scott. Thanks
Hey.
for being here. What are table reads like for you on the night shift, and how far in advance do you get the scripts?
Okay, so with this particular show, there's so many moving pieces, and the intricacies of the story, the medical stories, are so fluid. And on top of that, unlike any show I've ever been a part of before, these producers and writers are willing to kind of change course at a moment's notice. And so when things work, they lean into those things, and they'll rewrite a script based on something they've seen in a previous episode. And when things aren't working or don't go in the way they want, they'll lean away from those things. As a result, the process is way more fluid than I've ever experienced before, to the degree that we don't actually have table reads. And oftentimes, we're getting our scripts as late as a day before we start filming an episode. And so, it's just part of the process with this particular show. It makes for a unique process for the actors, because we've got to get up and running with the material pretty quickly. And if we're having to jump on YouTube and watch some surgery or wrap our minds and mouths around some difficult medical jargon, it takes some real effort. The producers try and get us the scripts as early as possible. So there are weeks where we'll get a script a week before we start. It's never really more than that, because I think in episodic TV now, things are just so fluid. It's funny, I saw online an old, I wouldn't call him a friend, but an acquaintance. We've crossed paths a bunch of times, and I love this guy, Christian Slater. He's a great actor, and he's on this really great show, Mr. Robot, right now, which I'm like obsessed with. And woo! Yeah, which is even better, way better than the Golden Globes. And he tweeted out a photo, and he was like, ready to start season 2, and it was all like 10 scripts in a big binder. And I just was like, I had like actor envy of that, because to have that kind of time to prepare and to just have a process with the material is always great. But it's amazing what you get accustomed to. And even though we get these scripts at the last second, there's I guess we're all familiar, it helps being in a third season when you're not necessarily having to go like, who am I anymore? It's more just seeing what your character's up to for the next week.
Next question.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
So were there any specific things you thought you needed to do to prepare for this kind of role, or even just per season?
Sure. I mean, in general, this is like the third Doctor I've had the good fortune of playing. He's the first. I guess there was one other. I did a show called The Nine where I played a surgeon. So I had shadowed the surgeon for that role, and that was a whole breadth of information that I kind of carried with me since then. To play this guy, in particular this season, at the end of the second season, what was super fun about this character was he was this kind of badass surgeon. He was super in charge. He drove a red Porsche. All was right in his world. And then at the end of last season, he got in this terrible car accident and paralyzed a young kid. And just basically swept the rug out from under him and kind of hit the reset button on his life. And so there was a bunch of research I did coming into this season about a person's life when they're in that particular moment. He had been sober for a long time, but then slipped and lost his sobriety. And to me, it was important to kind of weave in this idea of what happens to a person when they're trying to reestablish some sense of integrity and authenticity and humility after they've been after they'd strayed from that for a long time, coupled with the fact that he still has to be the guy in that hospital who, when a sick person comes through that door, when a bleeding, dying person comes through that door, he has to have that person belongs in these hands. And so, to me, it was a fascinating kind of merging of an intense desire to be humble, an intense need to not. And so it's been a fun season exploring that journey that the character's been on.
At the risk of making acting sound like it's being a doctor, which it's not.
So close.
But there's a level of compartmentalization that I feel like happens as an actor as well. If there's something going on in your family or at home or in your life, when you get to the set that morning, which you have to do, you got to act, which means you have to pretend you're somebody else and pretend you're happy or pretend you're this or that. So you eventually have to compartmentalize whatever's happening to yourself at home. In the same way, not as tragically or drastically as a doctor might, a doctor has to sort of put aside anything else.
For sure. Yeah, obviously there's less at stake, right,
Yes.
for us. We potentially could ruin an episode of television and not, let a person die. But yeah.
There's a certain thing that happens to your personality a little bit too when you get very comfortable or just know how to compartmentalize emotions sometimes.
For sure. And yes, that is 100% true. And, I think as an actor, a lot of times you're put in positions where, like this one, where you're sitting in front of people and you're talking about things and yourself and your work. And on some level, you go into a mode. I do not sit around my kitchen at home talking about my approach to my work. Jackson, eyes on daddy. This is important.
Oh, when I went
Put down
in
the
today,
chicken finger.
got the script, I was thinking about where to go with my body here with this one.
Yeah. No, but you're absolutely right. I feel like there are definite similarities. And that is one of my ways in to playing this guy is I do know what it means to have. I mean, look, it's not life and death, but there's a lot of money at stake. If you're not getting your job done, you're costing potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars an hour.
Oh my God, I think that's something that people don't realize who've never been on a set. If you show up and you don't know your lines, or if you don't know how to get what the director needs in the scene very quickly, especially on a TV show, they're going to be extremely mad at you.
Extremely.
They're going to be very unhappy.
Yeah, you are expected, whether you've done 100 series or none, the pace that you move at and the expense of not moving at that pace, the stakes are pretty high. And that's, one of the things that I'm, I suppose, grateful for in terms of, and it's, when I was doing the first series I ever did, or the first couple, I would see these actors come through who had been around forever, and they just had this sort of ease about their process, and I was like grinding away, but I remember like seeing them and thinking like, wow, that looks, so much of this feels like it's not at their expense, and they're just kind of allowed to, I did a movie with Watch Your Feet. I'm going to drop a name. I did a movie. I did a movie with Jeff Bridges. Some years ago.
Fantastic actor.
I mean, ridiculous. And the thing that struck me most was how fluid his process was, and he had been doing it long enough that he could just sort of enjoy all the aspects of it, and even it was as if he were sort of floating just on top of those pressures that we were all feeling as young actors, and again, I'm always aware of it, and it's why I prepare as hard as I do, because I just refuse to be the guy who's blowing it for everybody. But yeah, it's that, even that compartmentalization is pretty massive and a huge part of the actor's job, which is, if you're standing in front of the camera and you're supposed to be proposing your love to somebody, and all you're thinking about is, if I, fuck up this line, what's going to happen to me? Then, or my
two different places there mentally. So.
Yeah. I know, but my kid is sick, or something that's going on in my world, just being distracted from it, it's not doing anybody or the process any good.
Scott, I got to let you go. The night shift is on Wednesday nights, correct?
Wednesday nights, 10 Eastern, 9 somewhere. And I'm super, super, super proud of this show. I mean, to be in a third season of a show and feel like it is better than it's ever been is a great joy.
Well, congratulations. Thanks for talking to me, man.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, man.